It's been 7 years since the last Battlefield campaign, a decade since the last one set in modern day, the intriguing but ultimately flawed Hardline. In that time, Doom and its sequels took the speed of a single-player first-person shooter to the next level. Titanfall 2 pushed level design forward in inventive ways, and even Call of Duty reinvented itself on several different occasions to varying degrees of success. But Battlefield 6 has little interest in innovation, instead firmly looking back at what made the series so successful 2 console generations ago. Aside from being an impressive technical showcase at times, its small routine set of missions has little new to offer. There is some variety and a few moments of impressive scale to be found, but it's all over so quickly you barely have time to savour them. Though it never quite feels like a full-on afterthought, it's a campaign that comes across as a sidearm of Battlefield 6's arsenal when placed alongside its more grand multiplayer suite. Across its 9 missions, Battlefield 6 zips around at furious pace, but I couldn't help but feel that I'd done it all before, albeit at much lower fidelity. It's flashy, but lacking when it comes to genuinely interesting level design, with its great feeling gunplay not supported by what you're actually asked to achieve. On one hand, it makes sense for Battlefield Studios to take this approach and treat the campaign as a training ground for its trademark large-scale online warfare. The pure size and number of enemies that flood the screen in its missions are certainly in conversation with this, but in the other palm, it crushes all hope of crafting a thrilling story that has the chance of stepping out of the shadow cast by those multiplayer modes. That's not to say there aren't splashes of inspiration. A particular highlight was a sequence that takes place on a crumbling New York bridge. It's at least visually interesting, even if it offers no great variance in what it's asking you to do gameplay wise. There's just no one mission that screams out as an all-timer here, even if there are attempts to ape Modern Warfare's clean house, which fails to capture any of the desired tension, or its own version of a Normandy landing as you storm a Gibraltar beach. It's oddly very much a Call of Duty campaign in its map and objective design, and struggles to stamp much of the signature Battlefield large-scale action that made me fall in love with the series. I find it frustrating not to see risks being taken creatively, especially when such a vast budget is available to fuel such ambition. One later chapter set amongst the mountains of Tajikistan does take place in a wide open area and echoes the multiplayer roots of the series, as you're encouraged to take your own approach when completing the task at hand. In theory, this could be exciting, with all manner of airborne and ground vehicles ready to be controlled at your fingertips, and a vast library of weaponry and gadgets to gear up with. In practice, it presents as more of a thin veneer of choice rather than drastically different ways to tackle objectives, with the range of tools at your disposal kept frustratingly limited. You're given a drone to play with and a choice of ATVs and armoured trucks to drive, but little beyond that. I'm just not a fan of this larger map approach when it comes to first-person shooter campaigns, much preferring an authored hand-to-level design, rather than being handed a box of crayons to make my own fun with.
Set, ready to detonate!
These stretches are worryingly close to Modern Warfare 3's open combat missions at times, a memory I never wanted to relive, but at least they do feel philosophically more at home as Battlefield arenas. Thankfully, these don't make up the majority of the campaign, but what's found in its smaller scope staging isn't any more exciting. You'll often find yourself hunkering down in tight city streets or behind hulking tanks, waiting for the right opportunity to pop your head out. A run and gun mentality simply isn't welcomed here, with a patient, cover-based approach encouraged. The gunplay is snappy at least, with a satisfying weight to it whenever you do choose to open fire. Assault rifles and LMGs pack a powerful punch, and serve as efficient tools when faced with another wave of enemies.
Target above neutralized!
And sniper rifles are satisfyingly devastating, even if the enemy AI displays little brain to blow out. It gets especially exciting when the impressive destruction tech takes a chunk out of the building you've been finding solace in, and you're forced to scramble to another safe haven. These claustrophobic moments of true jeopardy really are all too rare though, as for the most part, the campaign is reduced to rinse and repeat objectives that were getting old in FPS campaigns a decade ago. Having one mission include a sequence where you need to destroy anti-aircraft guns or SAM sites can be forgiven, but doing this on more than 3 occasions is just downright boring and grinds any gathered momentum to a halt. There are only so many times planting C4 can be considered a fun time, and all too often you're tasked with standing still amongst the action and pressing a single button in order to continue. On multiple occasions, I was asked to watch some explosions that I didn't even get to set off take place, or sit in the back of a speeding vehicle and control a mounted turret that only gives you a mild feeling of being responsible for the carnage on screen. It's on rails all too often, taking its most exciting moments out of your hands and displaying them in cutscenes, resulting in much of the campaign feeling like the most straight-faced Disney ride ever built. I wanted to be the star of the show, but I ended up just feeling like a passenger. An early mission that takes you through an abandoned World War II tunnel network turned museum to the decades-old war serves as an unfortunate symbol for the campaign as a whole, a relic of first-person shooter design dressed up in a new guise. Being funneled through corridors towards the next static shooting gallery to gun down fish in a barrel is hardly exciting in 2025, and it barely was 20 years ago. Outside of a series of tank battles as dry as the desert roads they take place on, it attempts to sprinkle very little of that battlefield magic into the mix, largely negating environment destruction as part of your toolkit and never once putting you in control of an airborne vehicle. Is it really Battlefield if I'm never zooming along in a fighter jet or unleashing hell from a helicopter gunship? There is a slight glimmer of tactical ops magic to be seen, as you can call on your squad mates to activate their personalised skills to help you in a fight. They each come packed with their own multiplayer class flavoured abilities, such as Gecko, the recon specialist, being able to tag targets, which admittedly does make certain situations ridiculously easy, as every enemy in the area is revealed to you instantly.
Gecko, need your eyes ahead.
On it. Got 6 targets in my sight.
Ultimately though, each member ends up playing practically the same and feels like another missed opportunity to add a dash of variety into the mix. They each fall under the banner of an expert marine raider squad called Dagger 1-3, an unfittingly sharp name for such a dull bunch. On the whole, they're a fairly cookie-cutter military unit who love nothing more than getting their boots on the ground and shouting, "Hoorah!" with memorable character moments near non-existent. The performances and the shells of humans they inhabit are wholly forgettable, barely coming across as fully formed, and it's hard to detect any sort of emotion even when one of their own falls in the line of fire.
They're gone, Martinez.
Nuance is hardly the name of the game when it comes to Battlefield 6's campaign though, and its story, centered on taking down a rogue private military force called Pax Armata, ironically Latin for armed peace, proves to be anything but a peaceful one.
You're breaking protocol. You're never to contact me in person. I taught you both too
They're
well.
coming for you.
Who?
Pax.
It's a fairly straightforward affair that doesn't leave too much room for interpretation. For a military shooter about the collapse of NATO, it's all oddly apolitical in its presentation, and as such, it feels like it has nothing of real substance to say. It's safe, and as a result, largely uninteresting. At least Call of Duty has attempted to take on subjects such as chemical warfare and terrorism, even if they've ultimately been misguided efforts that come across as antithetical to its larger message. It's not easy to present such important themes delicately, so I can understand why Battlefield Studios may have felt like trying to fire and catch a bullet laced with hot button issues may have been a risk not worth taking, when it could simply choose not to pull the trigger at all. It just means that it doesn't have anything to say on a global or personal level, and all feels a little hollow as a result. It's a far cry from when the series did tell some engaging tales through the eyes of fun characters in its Bad Company days. I did also fall victim to a few annoying little glitches on the way, such as my character zipping across the screen involuntarily, fuzzy textures popping in, and occasional bullets aimed right at enemy heads leaving zero impact. But on the whole, there's no denying that it looks and sounds very impressive, with spectacular explosions peppering skylines and gunfire whizzing and cutting through smoke and debris as mayhem ensues around you with regularity. I just wish there was a little more substance hiding behind it all. At 9 missions and just 5 hours, Battlefield 6's campaign's flame doesn't burn for long, and it doesn't burn particularly bright in that time either. It's a staggering spectacle to behold at times, and a treat for the ears at others. But when it comes to mission design and an engaging plot, it fails to deliver at all. A quick afternoon of fun, it's a safe reimagining of what Battlefield once was, but far from a bold reinvention of what it could, and maybe should, be now.
Executive Reviews Editor Tom Marks here with Simon Cardy, our reviewer for the campaign of Battlefield 6. Cardy has done a bunch of shooters for us before, most notably a lot of the recent Call of Duty campaigns, so Black Ops 6 and Modern Warfare, Vanguard before that. You'll also be reviewing the campaign for Black Ops 7 in a month or two, and then also, other types of shooters, Suicide Squad, Overwatch, Marvel Rivals, that sort of space. But let's talk about this one. It's been a while since the last Battlefield, so why'd you wanna review this one?
I think mainly because there is kind of this ongoing, it's been a debate for decades, but it's kind of re-emerged as Call of Duty versus Battlefield debate, and I thought, not that it's my job to decide who reviews things, but I thought it would make sense if I'm reviewing COD to also review Battlefield, so people get, the fair opinion of which campaign is the better one. Obviously it's all based on my tastes, but it's as kind of fair as we can do it at IGN, get the same person to do both of them. So I thought, it would make sense, and I do love myself a first-person shooter campaign.
Well, what about your history with the series specifically? Are you a Battlefield fan? What's your favorite in the genre? All that.
I've kind of dipped in and out of Battlefield. I'd say the multiplayer isn't my preferred form of multiplayer, but the campaigns I've always tried to give a go. So obviously Bad Company 2, I love those, kind of the first real full campaigns that Battlefield did, and I kind of loved the tone of that. It felt a little bit different, a little bit on the lighter side despite being dark. It had a good balance of dark humor. I also really enjoyed Battlefield 1, the World War I one. I thought that was a good take on that, and it had a good level of variety, which is, I'm sure, what we'll get onto when we talk more about Battlefield 6. But I look for variety in first-person shooter campaigns, and I also look for good story and moments, and I feel like those previous Battlefield campaigns had those, and that's maybe something we didn't get here in Battlefield 6, unfortunately.
Right, yeah. So you mentioned this in the review itself, but you said it doesn't quite feel like an afterthought, right? But the vibe is that maybe it is heading that direction at least.
Yeah.
How do you? Well, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of. It's not. I feel it's harsh to call it an afterthought because it is a fully formed campaign. There is a through line. It's not like I reviewed Modern Warfare 3 a couple years back, and that very much did feel like an afterthought. It felt like, let's take pieces of multiplayer and Warzone and kind of cobble together a campaign that didn't really have much of a story. Whereas this one, there is a through line. They are specifically built missions with areas that I don't think are in multiplayer. So it does feel like a not complete afterthought. It feels like they did go into this wanting to make a campaign, and they did make one. It is short, 4 to 5 hours, which, just wanting to play the campaign, I don't think I could recommend that.
Yeah, and that's a big reason why we split our single player and multiplayer reviews for games like this, right? Because some people are just looking for the first-person shooter campaign, and some people are there for the online specifically. So that's why we split them up. But I wanted to ask you specifically about that, of what do you expect going into a game like this from a campaign, from a multiplayer shooter specifically? Are you expecting it to be sort of, the old way of things a decade or two ago? I feel like first-person shooter campaigns really were the FPS campaign was a thing, and that's sort of diminished in years since. So when you go in, what are you expecting? You said 5 hours felt short. Are you expecting a 10-hour campaign coming out of this, or?
I'm not necessarily expecting 10 hour, maybe a bit more than 4 or 5, maybe more around the 7 to 8 mark. Sure. I know Call of Duty campaigns probably are more around the 6, 7 if you're lucky with those. But maybe I'm just getting old, Tom. I don't know. I yearn for the days of full Halo campaigns, full Call of Duty campaigns that it felt like, I would spend almost a week playing those before then really getting stuck into the multiplayer for the rest of the year. And maybe we're living in a world now where those are completely divorced ideas. So if you want your campaigns, you do go to a Doom or a Wolfenstein. That is where you're going to get your first-person shooter campaigns of, real author designed quality. And maybe you come to a Battlefield if you want a little, you know, not even a weekend, an afternoon of campaign before getting stuck into the multiplayer. I will say that that's the way I did think we were heading, but I really, really enjoyed last year's Call of Duty campaign, and that felt authored. There were some wild missions in that, and it felt very authored and designed, and a step away from the direction I thought they were going, where it was more like free-form, open world-ish missions that felt more like multiplayer maps that you're just being dropped into with objectives. And there's kind of one of those in the Battlefield campaign, which isn't great. So I don't know. I kind of expect, maybe my expectations should be lowered at this point, but I do still yearn for those like peak Modern Warfare days and those peak Halo days, and even those peak Battlefield days of Bad Company and Bad Company 2, which I really enjoyed. I guess I just find it frustrating, right? That like, these are the games, Call of Duty and Battlefield, that have so much money behind them, and like there's all this like funding this and fueling this creativity, but you play it and you don't see that like innovation. I'm like a big, like, you know, maybe I ask too much of every game I play. I'm like, I want to see some innovation, I want to see something I haven't seen before. Whereas with this Battlefield, sadly, I'm kind of getting a campaign from 10 to 15 years ago that looks and sounds like incredible at times. Like, you know, a lot of the money has gone into the tech, I can tell that, but I just wish there was more in the ideas of like, how can we like shake up a military shooter, because I'm getting a lot of what I've played before here, sadly, I think.
Well, at least it's pretty while you're doing it.
Yeah, that's what people say about me. So there we go.
Cardy, thank you.
That sounded awful.
Cardy, thank you so much for chatting with me a little bit more about your tastes, your Battlefield history, all that jazz. If you want another conversation with Cardy about his last game he reviewed was Death Stranding 2 on the beach. We had a nice chat at the end of that one as well. Or if you want a different kind of shooter, a more recent Borderlands 4, also we have a good review of that one with the reviewer Travis Northup at the end of that. So check those both out, and for everything else, stick with IGN.